Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The air in Savannah, Georgia hung heavy with the scent of magnolia blossoms and the soft patter of rain on a late September evening. Down at the end of Willow Street, where the cobblestone paths wound like old stories, and the porches creaked with memories, stood a little house that didn't look like much from the outside. Its paint was chipped. The screen door sagged just a touch, but step inside and you'd swear you'd found a slice of heaven. The kitchen glowed with amber light. The smell of cornbread baking in the oven mingled with the smoky tang of gumbo simmering on the stove, and somewhere in the background a radio crackled with Mahalia Jackson's gospel, her voice rising like a prayer. This was Ruby Jackson's home, and if you asked anyone in the neighborhood, they'd tell you it wasn't just a house. It was a sanctuary. Ruby, a 48-year-old black woman with a smile that could melt the hardest heart, was the kind of person who made you feel like you belonged, no matter who you were. Her curly hair streaked with a few silver threads bounced when she laughed, which was often, and her eyes, sharp but kind, seemed to see right through to your soul. She worked at Miss Ellie's bakery downtown, kneading dough and charming customers with her quick wit, and on weekends she sold homemade jams at the farmer's market, her peach preserves famous for making grown men weep with nostalgia. Ruby wasn't rich, didn't own a fancy car or a big TV, but she had something. Money couldn't buy a heart big enough to hold the whole world. Folks called her Sister Ruby or Mama Ruby, though she'd never had kids of her own. Her husband Tommy passed 10 years back, and while she missed him, something fierce, she'd made peace with her quiet life. Loneliness didn't dare knock on her door, not when her kitchen was always open to neighbors' strays and anyone needing a hot meal or a good laugh. Tonight, Ruby was in her element, humming along to the radio as she stirred the gumbo, the wooden spoon moving like it had a mind of its own. Her apron, dusted with flour, hung loose over her faded jeans and t-shirt, and her bare feet tapped the linoleum floor to the rhythm of the music. The rain outside tapped the windows like a shy guest, and the world felt soft, slow, like nothing could go wrong. She'd just pulled a skillet of cornbread from the oven, its golden crust perfect enough to make her whisper, "Well, ain't you a pretty thing?" when a sound cut through the cozy hum of her evening, a knock, soft, hesitant, barely louder than the rain. Ruby paused, spoon hovering over the pot. "Now, who's that at this hour?" she muttered half to herself. "Better not be Lila May begging for sugar again. Woman's gonna clean out my pantry." She wiped her hands on her apron, her heart not racing but alert, the kind of instinct you develop after years of living in a world that don't always play fair. She crossed the small living room, its walls lined with framed photos of family and Polaroids of neighborhood kids she'd fed over the years, and opened the screen door. The sight on her porch stopped her cold. Standing there was a boy no more than 10, soaked to the bone, his thin frame shivering under a t-shirt and jeans that looked 2 sizes too small. His skin was pale, but his face was a map of pain. Bruises bloomed purple along his cheek, one eye slightly swollen, and his lips were cracked like he hadn't drunk water in days. His brown eyes, big and deep as a well, didn't hold fear so much as exhaustion, like he'd been running from something for so long. He'd forgotten what he was running toward. His arms were crossed tight over his chest as if holding himself together, and his sneakers, caked with mud, left a small puddle on her porch. "Please," he whispered, his voice hoarse, barely audible over the rain. "Don't make me go back." Ruby's breath caught her hand tightening on the doorframe. She'd seen a lot in her time, kids hungry for more than food, folks carrying hurts they couldn't name. But something about this boy hit her square in the chest. Without a word, she stepped forward, her bare feet touching the damp wood of the porch, and reached out a hand. "Come on in, baby," she said, her voice soft but firm, like a mother calling her child home. "You're safe now." He hesitated, his eyes searching hers as if waiting for the catch. But Ruby's face, warm and steady, held no tricks. He took a step, then another, and she guided him inside, closing the door behind them with a soft click that felt like a promise. The warmth of the kitchen wrapped around him like a blanket, the smell of gumbo and cornbread grounding the moment in something real, something safe. He stood in the entryway, dripping water onto the faded linoleum, his arms still crossed, eyes darting to the corners, like he expected trouble to follow him through the door. Ruby didn't rush him. She knew the weight of silence, knew how to let it breathe. She turned to the stove, grabbed a clean dish towel from the drawer and set it on the table before ladling gumbo into a wide ceramic bowl, the kind she saved for special guests. "Made this with okra and smoked sausage," she said, not looking at him, her voice as easy as a Sunday morning. "Got a little kick, but it's kind to the belly." She added a thick slice of cornbread, still warm, and stepped back, giving him space to decide. The boy didn't move at first, his body tense like a stray dog sniffing for danger. Then slowly he shuffled to the table, his fingers trembling as he reached for the spoon. The first bite was cautious, like he was testing the world itself. The second came faster, then the third, and soon his shoulders sagged. His breathing slowed, as if the warmth of the food was thawing something deeper. Ruby watched from the sink, wiping a plate that didn't need wiping, her eyes never leaving him. The bruises on his arm, peeking from under his sleeve, told a story she'd heard too many times. Pain that shouldn't touch a child. Cruelty that hid behind closed doors. When he finished, he looked up, meeting her gaze for the first time. His eyes held a question he was too scared to ask. "Am I safe here?" Ruby nodded as if answering a prayer instead of a glance. "You got a name, baby?" she asked, her voice like velvet, firm, but kind. He hesitated, his lips parting before he whispered, "Isaiah." The word came out rough, like it hadn't been used in a while, or maybe it had only been spoken with anger. Ruby repeated it, letting it roll off her tongue like it was sacred. "Isaiah," she said, smiling gently. "That's a strong name, like a prophet carrying truth." He nodded once, his eyes flickering down, and then so quiet. She almost missed it. He said, "Please don't call nobody. I'll be good, I can't go back." The plea was raw, wrapped in a fear that made Ruby's heart ache. She stepped closer, slow and careful, and pulled a faded quilt from the couch, draping it over his shoulders with a tenderness that made him flinch, not from pain, but from the shock of kindness. "I ain't sending you back sugar," she said, her voice steady. "Not tonight, not ever to danger. But I gotta call someone who can help the right way. You safe here? Till then? You hear me?" His lip quivered, and a single tear slipped down his cheek, silent like it had been waiting for permission to fall. Ruby cupped his face gently, her thumb brushing the tear away with the reverence of a mother tucking in her child. She stepped into the next room, picked up the old rotary phone and dialed the local police dispatch, her voice calm but firm. "This is Ruby Jackson on Willow Street. I got a boy here about 10, hurt bad. I need someone trained in child welfare, and don't you dare send no uniforms or flashing lights. He's been through enough." By the time she returned, Isaiah was curled on her couch, wrapped in the quilt, the empty bowl resting carefully on the coffee table. He was dozing, the kind of sleep that comes after carrying fear too long. Ruby sat beside him, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Her presence, a silent shield. She knew the system wasn't perfect. Lord, she'd seen it fail too many kids. But until morning came, she'd hold the night around this boy like a fortress. The hours passed, marked by the soft ticking of the wall clock and the occasional groan of wind against the windows. Outside, the rain slowed to a whisper, kissing the porch steps and leaving the air thick with memory. Ruby didn't sleep. She sat in her worn armchair, a shawl over her shoulders, her eyes fixed on Isaiah, There was something sacred about watching over someone who didn't yet know how to ask for protection. She'd done it before, fed hungry kids, patched up scraped knees. But this boy with his quiet pain and whispered plea felt different, like he was meant to walk through her door. Around midnight, the screen door creaked, and Lila Mae Ruby's 60-year-old neighbor with a penchant for gossip and burnt cookies poked her head in. Her hair was wrapped in a bright scarf, and her eyes widened at the sight of Isaiah asleep on the couch. "Ruby Jackson. Where'd you find this angel?" she whispered loud enough to wake half the street. "You fixin' to open a daycare or what?" Ruby shot her a look, half amused, half warning. "Lila, hush your mouth, 'fore you wake him, and if you brought them burnt cookies again, I'm feeding them to the squirrels." Lila clutched her chest, mock offended. "My cookies are art, Ruby." "But serious. Who's the kid? He looks like he's been through hell." Ruby's face softened, her voice low. "He has. Don't know much yet, but he's staying till I know he's safe." She glanced at Isaiah, her heart swelling with a fierce, protective love she couldn't explain. Lila nodded her usual sass, giving way to understanding. "You're a saint. Ruby, always were. I'll pray for him and you." She slipped out, leaving Ruby alone with her thoughts. As dawn crept through the lace curtains, Ruby's gaze fell on a small detail she hadn't noticed before. Around Isaiah's neck, barely visible under his shirt, hung a thin silver chain with a pendant engraved with the initials J.W. It was old, tarnished, the kind of thing you'd pass down through generations. Ruby frowned, a flicker of curiosity stirring. She didn't know it yet, but that pendant was a key, a clue to a secret that would unravel lives, bring love and danger to her doorstep, and change her world forever. Isaiah stirred his eyes, fluttering open, and Ruby smiled, pushing the pendant from her mind. "Morning, Yepsy," she said softly. "You ready for some biscuits?" He nodded, a shy smile breaking through, and in that moment Ruby knew she'd fight the world to keep that smile safe. But the world, as it often does, had plans of its own. The boy on her couch wasn't just any child. He was Isaiah Whitaker, the lost son of a man whose name carried weight in boardrooms and shadows alike. And the door Ruby opened tonight wasn't just a refuge. It was the beginning of a story that would test her heart, her courage, and everything she believed about love. What's next for Ruby and Isaiah? If this story of kindness and courage tugged at your heart, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss a second of what's coming. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what's a moment of kindness you'll never forget? Let's keep this light shining. The morning after the rain, Willow Street woke up slow and easy like it always did. Sunlight filtered through the magnolia trees, casting dappled shadows on Ruby Jackson's porch, where a couple of stray cats stretched lazily in the warmth. Inside her little house, the kitchen still smelled of last night's gumbo, though now the air carried a new note. Freshly brewed coffee and the buttery scent of biscuits baking in the oven. Ruby, her curly hair tied back with a colorful scarf, moved with the kind of grace that comes from years of knowing exactly who you are. Her apron was already dusted with flour, and she hummed a gospel tune low and steady as she set the table for two. Isaiah, the 10-year-old boy who'd shown up on her doorstep last night, bruised and shivering, was still asleep on the couch, wrapped in the quilt Ruby had draped over him. His face, peaceful in sleep, looked younger than it had in the rain's dim light, but the bruises on his cheek and arm were a stark reminder of the hell he'd run from. Ruby glanced at him, her heart swelling with a fierce protective love she couldn't quite name. She'd fed plenty of kids over the years, neighborhood strays, cousins, even the occasional runaway, but this boy felt different, like he'd been sent to her for a reason. She tiptoed to the stove, careful not to wake him, and checked the biscuits. "Lord, let these turn out right," she muttered, half praying, half laughing at herself. Boy's gonna need something good after the night he had. As if on cue, Isaiah stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He sat up slowly, clutching the quilt, his gaze darting around like he was remembering where he was. "Mornin', Hiepsy Ruby," said her voice warm as the coffee she poured into a chipped mug. "You sleep okay?" Isaiah nodded, his shy smile breaking through like a crack of sunlight. "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice still hoarse but softer now, less guarded. "Smells good. That's 'cause I'm fixin' you the best breakfast in Savannah," Ruby said, winking biscuits, sausage gravy and some scrambled eggs. "You ain't leaving this house hungry, you hear?" He nodded again, his smile growing, and shuffled to the table, the quilt still draped over his shoulders like a cape. Ruby set a plate in front of him, piled high with food, and sat across, sipping her coffee. She didn't push him to talk, just let the clink of silverware and the hum of the radio fill the silence. Isaiah ate like he hadn't seen a meal in days, but he was careful, almost polite, like he was afraid of making a mess. "You like them biscuits?" Ruby asked, leaning forward with a grin. "Made 'em with my grandma's recipe. Secrets in the buttermilk. They're real good," Isaiah said, his eyes meeting hers for a moment before dropping back to his plate. "Thank you, Miss Ruby." She chuckled. "Miss Ruby. Nah, you can just call me Ruby, or Mama. Ruby if you feel like it. That's what the kids around here do." He didn't say anything, but the way his shoulders relaxed told her he was starting to trust this place, this woman, this moment. Ruby watched him, her mind turning over the bruises, the fear in his voice last night. She'd called the police, asked for a caseworker, but she wasn't about to let him go anywhere until she knew he'd be safe. Not after the way he'd begged. "Don't make me go back." The screen door creaked, and Lila Mae Ruby's 60-year-old neighbor, with a flair for drama and a knack for burning everything she baked, burst in without knocking. Her bright orange scarf bobbed as she waved a plate of what looked like blackened hockey pucks. "Ruby Jackson, I brought breakfast," she announced, then stopped short, spotting Isaiah. "Well, well, who's this angel? You holding out on me, Ruby?" Ruby shot her a look, half amused, half warning. "Lila, you gonna wake the whole street with that voice? And if them's your cookies, I'm feeding 'em to the dogs." Lila clutched her chest, mock offended. "My cookies are art, Ruby. Art." She set the plate on the counter, then leaned down to Isaiah, her eyes twinkling. "Well, what's your name, sugar? You look like you need some of Miss Lila's famous treats." Isaiah glanced at Ruby, unsure, but her nod gave him courage. "Isaiah," he said softly. "Isaiah." Lila clapped her hands. "That's a Bible name, boy. You gonna be a preacher or a president. Mark my words." She turned to Ruby, lowering her voice. "He's staying with you. Looks like he's been through it. For now." Ruby set her tone firm. "Till I know he's got somewhere safe." Lila nodded, her usual sass, giving way to understanding. "You're a saint." Ruby, always were. She patted Isaiah's shoulder, then bustled out, promising to bring better cookies tomorrow. Ruby rolled her eyes, muttering, "Lord, save us from Lila's baking," and Isaiah let out a small laugh, the sound so unexpected it made Ruby's heart skip. "You got a giggle in there, huh?" she teased. "Keep that gonna need it." Over the next few days, Ruby's house became Isaiah's refuge. She took him to the thrift store downtown, picking out clothes that actually fit jeans. A couple of t-shirts and a denim jacket he chose with a shy grin. "You looking like a rock star now," Ruby said, ruffling his hair. "What's next, a guitar?" He laughed again, softer this time, and Ruby stored that sound in her heart like a treasure. She taught him how to make roux for gumbo, how to shell peas without squashing them, and told him stories about her younger days, like the time she set the kitchen on fire trying to impress Tommy with a fancy recipe. "Don't be like me, Isaiah," she said, winking. "Love's great, but keep an eye on the stove." Isaiah didn't talk much about where he'd come from, but bits slipped out. a stepfather who hit hard, a mother too scared to leave a house where silence was safer than speaking. Ruby listened without pushing her heart breaking, but her face steady. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch snapping green beans, he looked at her and said, "You ever been scared, Ruby?" She paused, her hands stilling. "Plenty of times, baby. But you know what? Fear's just a shadow. You shine a light on it, and it don't stand a chance." He nodded like he was filing that away, and Ruby knew she was planting something in him. Hope, maybe. Or the start of healing. When the caseworker came, a kind woman named Mrs. Carter, Ruby made sure Isaiah stayed close. Mrs. Carter promised a foster home was being arranged, but Ruby wasn't letting him go without a fight. "He stays here till you got something solid," she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "I ain't sending him nowhere. He ain't safe." Mrs. Carter nodded, impressed. "You've got a good heart, Ms. Jackson. We'll make this right." The day Isaiah left, Ruby gave him a small notebook, the first page inscribed with her careful handwriting. "You are seen. You are safe. You are somebody." He hugged her tight, his skinny arms stronger than she expected, and whispered, "I'll come back." "Mama, Ruby." "You better," she said, blinking back tears. "This door's always open." The house felt too quiet after he left, but Ruby carried on her heart full of the boy who'd called her Mama. She didn't know it yet, but that notebook, those words would guide Isaiah through years of struggle, leading him to a future she couldn't imagine. 10 years later, Ruby was still on Willow Street, still slinging biscuits at Miss Ellie's, still dodging Lila's burnt cookies. Her hair had a few more silver streaks, but her laugh was as bright as ever. One crisp spring morning, as she sorted through a stack of mail bills junk the usual, she found a thick cream-colored envelope with no return address, just her name in elegant script. Curious. She slid it open, and a single sheet fell out embossed with the words, "Whitaker Enterprises, Atlanta, GA." The letter was short, but it hit like a thunderbolt. "Dear Ms. Ruby Jackson, my name is James Whitaker. 10 years ago, you opened your door to a boy named Isaiah, my son, who'd been lost to me after a tragedy I cannot yet explain. Your kindness saved him, and I owe you more than words can say. I'd like to meet you, to thank you in person. Please name the time and place. Sincerely, James Whitaker." Ruby's hands trembled as she set the letter down. Isaiah, her Isaiah, was the son of James Whitaker. The name rang a bell, some big-shot real estate tycoon always in the papers for deals or scandals. She sank into a chair, her mind racing. How had a boy like Isaiah ended up on her porch? And what kind of man was this? James Whitaker looking for her after all these years. A week later, a sleek black sedan pulled up to her house and outstepped James Whitaker. He was tall, broad-shouldered with salt and pepper hair, and eyes that carried a weight. Ruby recognized. Grief tempered by time. His suit probably cost more than her truck, but he looked nervous like a man stepping into a church for the first time. Ruby opened the screen door, her apron still on, and couldn't help a jab. "Well, look at you, rolling up like some Hollywood star. You lost Mr. Whitaker?" James smiled a little sheepish. "Ms. Jackson, Ruby, I'm right where I need to be. I don't know how to thank you for what you did for Isaiah." "Come on in," she said, waving him inside. "Coffee's hot, and I ain't taking no for an answer." They sat in her kitchen, the same table where Isaiah had eaten his first meal. James told her about his wife, Elizabeth, killed in a car accident, orchestrated by a rival, Victor Crane. In the chaos of grief, he'd lost track of Isaiah, who was only 4, sent to a relative who turned out to be no good. For 10 years, James searched, hiring detectives, chasing leads, until a DNA test finally found his son, now a law student with dreams as big as the sky. Ruby listened, her coffee growing cold, and then told him about Isaiah, the scared boy, The shy smile, the notebook she'd given him. "He called me Mama Ruby," she said, her voice thick. "Still does when he writes." James leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "You didn't just save my boy Ruby. You gave him a reason to keep going. You gave him a home when I couldn't." She waved a hand, brushing off the praise. "I just did what my heart said. Ain't no hero in that." But the way James looked at her like she was something rare and precious stirred something in Ruby she hadn't felt in years. Their hands brushed as she refilled his coffee, and a spark, small but real, passed between them. For a moment, the kitchen felt smaller, warmer, like the world had shrunk to just the two of them. That spark might have grown, but fate had other plans. A few days later, at a charity gala James hosted in Savannah, a woman named Vanessa Reed slinked into the picture, 28, blonde, with a smile sharp as a switchblade. Vanessa was a pro at spotting money and sinking her claws in. She glided up to James in a red dress that hugged every curve, her voice dripping honey. "Mr. Whitaker, I hear you're the most generous man in Atlanta. Care to prove it?" James, polite but cold, stepped back. "Depends on the cause." "Ms. Reed, I'm here for the kids, not the spotlight." Vanessa's smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed. She'd heard whispers about Ruby, the woman James kept visiting on Willow Street, and she didn't like competition. By the end of the week, she was spreading rumors, faster than Spanish moss grows, claiming Ruby was after James's money. Lila May, Ruby's ride-or-die neighbor, caught wind and was ready to throw hands. "That Vanessa gal, I'll bake her into my next batch of cookies." She fumed, brandishing a tray of her infamous charcoal pucks. Ruby laughed it off. "Lila, I ain't fighting no gold digger. Truth'll come out. Always does." But then, late one night, Ruby's phone pinged with a photo, Vanessa draped over James at a bar. His face grim, her smile triumphant. A text followed. "Stay in your lane. Ruby, you're out of his league." Ruby stared at the screen, her heart sinking. She'd started to care for James more than she'd admit, and now doubt crept in. Was he playing her? Or was Vanessa pulling strings? The kitchen. Once her sanctuary felt too small, too quiet, as she wrestled with the question. Could she trust the man who'd walked into her life because of the boy they both loved? The sun hung low over Savannah, painting Willow Street in shades of gold and amber, but inside Ruby Jackson's little house the air felt heavier than usual. The kitchen, normally a haven of gumbo and gospel, carried a quiet tension like the calm before a low-country storm. Ruby stood at the sink scrubbing a pot with more force than necessary, her mind replaying the photo that had landed on her phone 2 nights ago. Vanessa Reed, all curves and smug smiles, draped over James Whitaker at some fancy bar. Her text like a slap. "Stay in your lane. Ruby, you're out of his league." Ruby's heart, which had started to open to James, now wrestled with doubt. Was he the man she thought he was, or just another rich guy playing games? Ruby wasn't one to wallow. She'd buried a husband, raised half the neighborhood's kids, and faced down plenty of hard days with a laugh and a prayer. But this stung. She'd let herself feel something for James, a spark she hadn't expected at 48. And now Vanessa's scheming had her second-guessing Lord. "Give me strength," she muttered, rinsing the pot and setting it aside, "and maybe a cast-iron skillet to knock some sense into somebody." The screen door creaked, and Lila May burst in, her bright purple scarf bouncing as she waved a rolled-up newspaper like a sword. "Ruby Jackson. You seen this nonsense?" she hollered, slamming the paper on the table. The headline screamed "Local Woman Eyes Millionaire's Fortune" below it. A grainy photo of Ruby serving James coffee in her kitchen snapped through her window by some nosy paparazzo. The article, dripping with innuendo, painted Ruby as a gold digger cozying up to James Whitaker for his millions. Ruby's jaw tightened, but she forced a laugh. "Lila, they got nothing better to write about. Next, they'll say I'm stealing the mayor's silverware." Lila wasn't laughing. This ain't no joke, Ruby. That Vanessa Reed's behind it. I'd bet my best wig. She's spreading lies faster than kudzu grows, saying you're after James's money. Folks around here starting to whisper. Ruby's smile faded. She'd spent her life building trust on Willow Street, feeding kids, listening to troubles, sharing what little she had. The idea that her neighbors, her people, might believe Vanessa's poison hurt worse than the photo. Let 'em whisper, she said, her voice low. Truth don't need no megaphone, but Lila wasn't letting it go. You gotta do something, Ruby. That gal's playing dirty, and I ain't talking about mud pies. I say we bake her into my next batch of cookies, burnt to a crisp. Ruby chuckled, the sound easing the knot in her chest. Lila, your cookies are already a weapon. Don't need no help from Vanessa. She hugged her friend, grateful for the loyalty, but her mind was spinning. She needed to talk to James to hear his side, even if it meant risking her heart. That afternoon, Ruby headed to Miss Ellie's bakery, where she worked the counter and kneaded dough like it was her therapy. The bakery, with its checkered floors and glass cases full of pies, was a second home buzzing with regulars who greeted Ruby like family. But today the air felt different. Mrs. Thompson, who usually begged for Ruby's peach preserves, avoided her eyes. Two women at a corner table whispered behind their menus, glancing her way. Ruby kept her smile on, but it took effort. Then Vanessa Reed walked in her heels, clicking like a predator's claws. She wore a tight white dress that screamed money, her blonde hair swept up, and a smile that could cut glass. The bakery went quiet, every eye on her as she sauntered to the counter. Ruby, isn't it? She said, her voice syrupy. I hear you're quite the entrepreneur, making friends in high places. Ruby's hands stilled on the dough she was shaping. She met Vanessa's gaze, her own eyes steady as steel. I make friends wherever there's a heart worth knowing. She said, her tone calm but sharp. You here for pie? Or just stirring up trouble? Vanessa's smile didn't waver. Oh, I don't need pie. I get my sweets elsewhere. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Stay away from James, Ruby. You're out of your depth. He's mine. Ruby wiped her hands on her apron, stepping around the counter. She was shorter than Vanessa, but her presence filled the room. Co-read, if you want. James, go get him fair and square. But don't come in my town playing dirty. I don't scare easy. The bakery held its breath, waiting for Vanessa's next move. She laughed a high, brittle sound and tossed her hair. We'll see who's standing when this is over. She turned on her heel and left, leaving a cloud of perfume and tension behind Lila, who'd been eavesdropping from the back, rushed out, waving a rolling pin. Ruby, why didn't you let me at her? I'd have frosted that gal like a cupcake. Ruby shook her head, managing a smile. Lila, I ain't wasting my energy on her, but I need to talk to James. This mess is getting out of hand. That evening, Ruby sat on her porch, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and the hum of cicadas. She'd texted James asking him to come by, and now her stomach was in knots. She wasn't used to this feeling, vulnerable, wanting answers. The rumble of a car engine broke her thoughts, and James's black sedan pulled up. He stepped out his suit jacket off. Tie loosened, looking less like a tycoon, and more like a man carrying too much weight. Ruby, he said, climbing the porch steps, his voice soft but urgent. I got your message. What's wrong? She stood crossing her arms. You tell me, James. I got a picture of you and Vanessa Reed looking cozy, and now the whole town thinks I'm chasing your wallet. What's the deal? James's face fell, his eyes searching hers. Ruby, that photo. It's not what it looks like. Vanessa showed up at a bar drunk or pretending to be and threw herself at me. I pushed her off, told her to leave me alone. Someone must have snapped that shot to stir trouble. Ruby wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered. Why's she so hell-bent on you then? And why's my name in the papers? James, I didn't sign up for this. He stepped closer, his voice low. I don't know why Vanessa's doing this, but I swear, Ruby, I'm not playing games. You're the realest thing I've found in years. I'd rather lose every dime I have than hurt you." His words hit her hard, cracking the wall she'd built. She looked into his eyes, saw the sincerity there, and felt her resolve waver. "You mean that?" she asked, her voice softer now. "With everything I am," he said, reaching for her hand. His touch was warm, steady, and for a moment, the world fell away. "Come with me," he said suddenly, a spark in his eyes. "Let's get out of here just for a bit. Clear the air." Ruby hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but if you're taking me to some fancy place, I'm warning you, I'm a gumbo girl, not a caviar one." He laughed, the sound easing the tension. "No caviar. Promise." They drove to the Savannah River where the water shimmered under a crescent moon, the city's lights twinkling like fireflies. They walked along the riverfront, the air cool and briny, the hum of distant jazz drifting from a nearby bar. Ruby felt the weight of the day lift her steps lighter beside James. He told her about his childhood in Atlanta, how he'd built his empire from nothing, how losing his wife Elizabeth had nearly broken him. Ruby shared her own stories, Tommy's laugh, the kids she'd fed, the way Savannah held her heart. "You ever think about leaving this place?" James asked, his shoulder brushing hers as they paused by the water. "Nah," Ruby said, smiling. "Savannah's in my bones. Besides, who'd keep Lila's cookies from taking over the world?" He chuckled, then grew serious. "Ruby, I haven't felt like this, like I could breathe, since before Elizabeth died. You make me want to be better, to be here with you." Her heart skipped, but she teased to hide it. "James, you keep talking sappy like that. I'm gonna think I'm in one of Lila's romance movies." He grinned, stepping closer, his hand finding hers. "Maybe we are," he said, his voice low. He leaned in slow enough for her to pull away, but she didn't. His lips brushed her forehead, a gentle kiss that felt like a promise, warm and steady against the cool night air. Ruby closed her eyes, letting the moment sink in her heart, whispering that maybe, just maybe, this was real. They stood there, hands clasped, the river flowing beside them, until Ruby pulled back, a playful glint in her eye. "All right, Romeo, don't get too carried away. I got biscuits to bake tomorrow." He laughed, the sound full and free. "Fair enough. But this ain't over. Ruby Jackson." As they drove back to Willow Street, Ruby felt lighter, like she'd reclaimed something she hadn't known she'd lost. But when she checked her phone later, a new message waited, an anonymous number with another photo of James and Vanessa. This time at the gala, her hand on his arm, his face unreadable. The text read, "He's lying. You're nothing to him." Ruby's stomach twisted. The warmth of the riverfront faded, replaced by a cold knot of doubt. Was James telling the truth, or was Vanessa right? Had she let her heart walk her into a trap? The kitchen, her sanctuary, felt too small to hold the questions swirling in her mind. She needed answers. But more than that, she needed to protect the life she'd built, the trust of her community, the love she'd given Isaiah, and the fragile hope she'd started to feel with James. Across town, Vanessa Reed sipped champagne in her penthouse suite, smirking at her phone. She'd planted the seeds, and they were growing fast. Ruby Jackson might be tough, but Vanessa played to win, and she wasn't done yet. The morning sun crept over Savannah, casting a warm glow on Willow Street, but Ruby Jackson's heart was anything but settled. She stood in her kitchen, the familiar scent of coffee and cornbread, doing little to ease the storm brewing inside her. The photo of James Whitaker with Vanessa Reed, her hand possessive on his arm, still burned in her mind, despite the tender moment they'd shared by the Savannah River. James had sworn Vanessa was nothing to him, just a schemer stirring trouble. But the whispers in town, fueled by that gossip rag calling Ruby a gold digger, were harder to shake. She'd built her life on trust on being the one folks could count on, and now that trust was cracking like old paint on her porch. Ruby wasn't one to sit and stew. She tied her scarf around her curls, pulled on her apron, and got to work kneading dough for biscuits, her hands moving with a rhythm that usually calmed her. "Lord, give me clarity," she muttered, punching the dough a little harder than necessary. "And maybe a sign, 'cause I'm 'bout tired of this mess." The screen door creaked, and Marcus Tate, Savannah's finest detective, and Ruby's old high school friend, strolled in, his police badge glinting on his belt. At 45, Marcus was tall, broad-shouldered, with the easy grin that hid the sharpness of his eyes. He'd always had a soft spot for Ruby, though she'd never let him get past friendly teasing. "Morning, Ruby," he said, leaning against the counter. "Smells like heaven in here. You saving me a biscuit, or am I begging again?" Ruby shot him a look, her lips twitching. "Marcus Tate, you eat more of my biscuits than my oven can bake. What you doing here? Don't tell me Lila's calling the cops on her own cookies now." He chuckled, but his face turned serious. "Wish it was that simple. Got a tip you need to hear, Ruby. It's about that boy you took in years back. Isaiah." Ruby's hands stilled the dough, forgotten. "Isaiah. What's going on? He's in college now, doing good." "Ain't he?" Marcus nodded, but his jaw was tight. "He's fine far as I know, but someone's been asking around about him. Shady type's not the kind you invite to Sunday supper. I did some digging, and it leads back to a name you might have heard, Victor Crane." Ruby's breath caught. James had mentioned Victor Crane, the man who'd orchestrated his wife Elizabeth's death in a staged car accident 15 years ago, tearing his family apart and sending little Isaiah into a nightmare of foster homes. "Crane," she said, her voice low. "What's that snake want with Isaiah?" "Don't know yet," Marcus said, "but my gut says he's got a score to settle with James Whitaker. Isaiah's the perfect target. I'm keeping eyes on it, but you need to watch your back, Ruby. You're tied to this now." Ruby's heart pounded, but she squared her shoulders. "If anybody comes for that boy, they'll have to go through me first, and I ain't playing nice." Marcus grinned, though worry lingered in his eyes. "That's my Ruby. Just don't go swinging no skillets till I give the word, all right." She swatted him with a dish towel, forcing a laugh. "Get out of my kitchen, Marcus, 'fore I make you peel potatoes." But as Marcus left, Ruby's mind raced Isaiah, her Isaiah in danger. The boy who'd called her Mama Ruby, who'd carried her notebook through years of struggle, was now a pawn in some rich man's vendetta. She needed to talk to James, and fast. That afternoon, Ruby called James, her voice steadier than she felt. "We gotta talk, James." "Not about Vanessa or the papers. Something bigger. Can you come by?" He was there in an hour, his face etched with concern as he stepped onto her porch. "Ruby, what's going on? You sounded scared." She led him inside, pouring coffee to keep her hands busy. Marcus Tate stopped by. "Says Victor Crane's sniffing round Isaiah. You know what that means better than I do." James's face darkened, his hand tightening around the mug. "Crane. He spat the name like poison. He took Elizabeth from me, tore my family apart. If he's after Isaiah..." He trailed off, his eyes haunted, but then he looked at Ruby and something shifted. Resolve, maybe, or something deeper. "I won't let him touch my son." "Not again." Ruby nodded, her own fear giving way to determination. "Then we gotta be smart. Marcus is on it. But we need a plan. Isaiah's out there living his life, and he don't even know he's a target." James leaned forward, his voice low. "I've got people security investigators, but I need you, Ruby. You know, Isaiah's heart better than anyone. He trusts you, and I trust you." Her breath caught at the weight of his words. Despite the doubts Vanessa had sown, James's trust felt like a lifeline. "All right," she said, meeting his gaze. We're in this together, for Isaiah. The next day, Ruby came up with an idea, as bold as it was risky. We throw a party, she said, sitting across from James at her kitchen table, a plate of cornbread between them, right here on Willow Street. Invite the whole neighborhood, make it look like a regular shindig. If Crane's people are watching, they'll show up thinking Isaiah might be here. We flush, get 'em to show their faces. James stared at her, half amazed, half amused. Ruby, you're a damn general. How'd you get so smart? She grinned, brushing off the compliment. I'm a cook, James. I know how to bait a trap with the right ingredients, and I ain't losing that boy to no snake like Crane. They planned the party for Saturday, spreading the word through Lila May, who was thrilled to play host. I'm bringing my famous cookies, she declared, ignoring Ruby's groan. And if any of Crane's goons show up, I'll stuff 'em so full they can't run. Lila, your cookies are a crime, Ruby teased, but her heart wasn't in it. She was too focused on keeping Isaiah safe. The night of the party, Willow Street buzzed with life. String lights crisscrossed Ruby's yard music. Aretha Franklin. Al Green poured from a borrowed speaker, and neighbors danced and laughed, their kids chasing fireflies. Ruby wore her favorite blue dress, her curls loose, but her eyes scanned the crowd, alert for trouble. James, in a simple button-down, stayed close, his hand brushing hers now and then, a silent reminder of their pact. Marcus was there too, blending in but watching every face. He'd brought a couple of off-duty cops dressed casual to avoid suspicion. If Crane's people show, we'll spot 'em, he told Ruby, his voice low. You just keep smiling and serving that gumbo. Smiling's my specialty, Ruby said, but her stomach was in knots. She hadn't heard from Isaiah in days, and the thought of him out there unaware of the danger made her want to scream. As the night wore on, Ruby noticed a man lingering near the edge of the yard, mid-30s, buzz-cut, too stiff for a party. He wasn't eating, wasn't dancing, just watching. She caught Marcus's eye, nodding subtly, and he moved toward the guy, casual. As you please. Ruby kept her cool, joking with neighbors, but her heart raced. Then it happened. The man made a move, slipping toward the back gate, pulling out a phone. Marcus and his team were on him in seconds, pinning him before he could bolt. The party barely noticed the music drowning out the scuffle, but Ruby saw it all. She grabbed James's arm, her voice urgent. They're here. Crane's people. James's face hardened, but he squeezed her hand. You were right, Ruby. We got 'em. Marcus hauled the guy to a quiet corner, questioning him while the party rolled on. The man cracked fast, admitting he worked for Crane, sent to confirm if Isaiah was in Savannah. He's got plans for the kid, the guy mumbled, avoiding Marcus's glare. That's all I know. Ruby's blood ran cold, but she held it together. Plans? What kind of plans? Marcus shook his head. He's low level. Don't know much, but we've got enough to lean on Crane now. As the party wound down, Ruby and James stood on her porch, the last guests trickling out. The string lights swayed in the breeze, and the air smelled of jasmine and leftover barbecue. Ruby's heart was still racing, but she felt a new strength forged in the fire of what they'd pulled off. You were incredible tonight, James said, his voice soft, his eyes locked on hers. I've got all the money in the world. But you, Ruby, you're the one who made this work. She waved a hand, but her cheeks warmed. Just doing what I do, James. Keeping folks safe. He stepped closer, his hand finding hers, his thumb tracing her knuckles. It's more than that. You're everything, Ruby. I don't know what I'd do without you. Her breath hitched, the world narrowing to the warmth of his touch, the steadiness in his eyes. Careful, James, she said, her voice teasing but shaky. You keep talking like that. I might start believing you. I hope you do, he said, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. Not on the forehead this time, but something deeper. But the moment passed and he just held her hand like he was anchoring himself to her. They didn't know it yet. But Vanessa Reed was watching from across the street, hidden in a parked car. She'd heard about the party, knew something was up, and now she was furious. Ruby and James had outsmarted Crane's man, and that meant her own plans. Getting James's money. His power was slipping away. She gripped her phone, texting a number she'd sworn never to use again. Victor Crane's private line. "They're on to you. We need to talk." Back on the porch, Ruby felt a chill like someone was watching, but she pushed it aside. "We did good tonight," she said, squeezing James's hand. "But this ain't over. Crane's still out there, and Vanessa's playing her own game." James nodded, his jaw tight. "Let 'em come. We're ready." Ruby smiled, fierce and sure. "Damn right we are." But as they said goodnight, a new message hit Ruby's phone, an anonymous number with a single line. "You can't protect him forever." Her heart sank. The victory of the night tainted by fear. Isaiah was still out there, and the danger was closing in. Will Ruby and James keep Isaiah safe? Or is Vanessa's next move gonna tear it all apart? If this story's got your heart racing, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell to catch every twist. Drop a comment where you watching from and who's got your back. Ruby's crew or Vanessa's schemes. Let's keep this fight going. The air in Savannah was thick with the promise of rain, the kind of heavy electric calm that made the hairs on your arms stand up. On Willow Street, Ruby Jackson's little house stood quiet, but inside her heart was a battlefield. The victory of the neighborhood party where they'd caught one of Victor Crane's goons felt like a lifetime ago. Now new threats loomed. Vanessa Reed's lies had turned half the town against Ruby, and a chilling message on her phone. "You can't protect him forever," hung over her like a storm cloud. Isaiah, the boy she'd saved 10 years ago, was out there, a college kid with big dreams, unaware that Crane, the man who destroyed his family, was closing in. Ruby stood at her kitchen counter, chopping onions for gumbo with a ferocity that matched her mood. The knife flashed each slice a release for the anger and fear she wouldn't let show. She'd faced down gossip before. Vanessa's trashy article calling her a gold digger was nothing new. But this was different. This was about Isaiah, her boy, and James Whitaker, the man who'd cracked open her heart when she thought it was sealed shut. "Lord, give me strength," she muttered, tossing the onions into a sizzling skillet. "And maybe a bigger knife, 'cause I'm about ready to cut through this nonsense." The screen door creaked and Lila May burst in, her bright yellow scarf flapping like a warning flag. She clutched a flyer, her eyes wide with outrage. "Ruby, you seen this garbage?" she hollered, slapping the paper on the table. It was a printed screenshot circulated around town, showing Ruby accepting an envelope from James outside her house with a caption screaming, "Payoff or payday, local woman's true colors." The photo was grainy, but the implication was clear. Ruby was on the take. Ruby's stomach twisted, but she forced a laugh. "Lila, they're trying harder than a pig in a mud wrestle." "That's just me taking a recipe book from James. Who's got time for this?" Lila wasn't amused. "Vanessa Reed, that's who. She's got half the neighborhood thinking you're some kind of con artist. Even Mrs. Thompson's acting funny, and she loves your peach preserves." Ruby's smile faded. Mrs. Thompson's cold shoulder at the bakery had hurt, but hearing it spread further stung deep. She'd spent her life building trust on Willow Street, and now Vanessa's lies were tearing it apart. "Let 'em talk," she said, her voice low. "I ain't here to please everybody, but Lila was on a warpath. We gotta shut this down, Ruby. I say we march to that gal's fancy hotel and give her a piece of my mind, maybe with a side of my cookies." Ruby chuckled, the sound easing her tension. "Lila, your cookies'd start a riot, but I'm handling this. Vanessa wants a fight. She's gonna get one, just not the way she thinks." That afternoon, Ruby headed to Miss Ellie's bakery, where the air was thick with the scent of pecan pie and brewing coffee. The regulars were there, but the vibe was off. Whispers followed her eyes, avoided hers. She kept her head high, joking with customers, but her heart wasn't in it. Then, as she was wiping down the counter, the bell above the door jingled, and Vanessa Reed strutted in her red lipstick, sharp as a blade, her dress screaming money. The bakery went quiet, every eye on the showdown. "Well, Ruby," Vanessa purred, leaning on the counter, "you're quite the talk of the town. Shame it's not for your cooking." Ruby didn't flinch, her hand steady as she folded a dish towel. "Vanessa, you got a lot of nerve walking in here. You want a pie? Or you just here to stir up more lies?" Vanessa's smile was venomous. "I don't need pie. I'm just enjoying the view, watching you lose everything. James is mine, and you're just a bump in the road." Ruby stepped closer, her voice low but fierce. "Co-Reed, I don't play for keeps with men or money, but you mess with my family. You're gonna wish you stayed in Atlanta." Vanessa laughed, tossing her hair. "Family? You mean that runaway kid and a man who's way out of your league? Keep dreaming, Ruby." She turned and sashayed out, leaving a trail of perfume and fury. Lila, who'd been eavesdropping from the back, rushed out, waving a spatula. "Ruby, why didn't you let me at her? I'd have whipped that gal like cream." Ruby shook her head, her jaw tight. "She ain't worth it, Lila. But she's working with someone bigger, I can feel it." That night, Ruby's fears were confirmed. Marcus Tate stopped by, his face grim. "Ruby, we got a problem," he said, sitting at her kitchen table, a coffee mug untouched. "That goon we nabbed at the party. He's singing now. Says Vanessa's been feeding info to Victor Crane, names places, even Isaiah's school schedule. She's playing both sides, trying to get Crane's money and James's heart." Ruby's blood ran cold. Vanessa's working with Crane. "That means Isaiah's in more danger than we thought." Marcus nodded. "Crane's got a vendetta against James, and Isaiah's the perfect way to hit him where it hurts. We're tracking Crane's moves, but Vanessa's slippery. She's covering her tracks." Ruby's hands clenched, her mind racing. "We gotta warn Isaiah, and James needs to know now." She called James, her voice urgent. "Get over here, James. We got trouble, and it's uglier than Vanessa's attitude." He arrived in 20 minutes, his face pale but resolute. Ruby laid it all out. Vanessa's betrayal, Crane's plan, the danger to Isaiah. James's hands shook, but his voice was steel. "I lost my wife to Crane. I won't lose my son." Ruby reached across the table, her hand covering his. "We won't let that happen. We're family now. James, we fight together." He looked at her, his eyes burning with gratitude and something deeper. "Ruby, you're the strongest person I know. I don't deserve you, but I'm damn glad you're here." She squeezed his hand, her heart steady despite the fear. Save the sweet talk, Whitaker. We got work to do. The next day, disaster struck. A new video hit social media, shared by an anonymous account, but clearly Vanessa's work. It showed Ruby accepting a thick envelope from James outside her house, edited to look like a shady payoff. The caption read, "Savannah's favorite cook caught in the act." By noon, the video had spread like wildfire, and Ruby's phone buzzed with messages, some supportive, others. Cruel neighbors who'd eaten her gumbo turned cold. Even Mrs. Thompson canceled her weekly preserve order. Ruby stood on her porch, the weight of the betrayal crushing her. "Y'all think I need James's money," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I need my people, my home. That's all I ever wanted." Lila was there in a flash, her arms around Ruby. "Don't you dare let that snake win, Ruby Jackson. We know you, and we're gonna fight this." But the fight got harder. That evening, Marcus called with worse news. "Ruby, Isaiah's missing. He didn't show up for class, and his roommate says he got a weird call last night. We're tracking his phone, but it's off." Ruby's heart stopped. "Missing Marcus. You find him, you hear me? You find my boy. James was there, his face ashen. "This is Crane," he said, his voice raw. "He's got him. I know it." Ruby grabbed her keys, her voice fierce. "Then we're getting him back. Now." They raced to Marcus's precinct, where he'd assembled a team. Using the goon's confession, they traced Crane to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Savannah, a place he used for shady deals. Marcus led the raid with Ruby and James following in a separate car, their hearts pounding. "If anything happens to Isaiah," James said, his hands gripping the wheel, "I'll never forgive myself." Ruby touched his arm, her voice steady. "We're gonna bring him home. James, together." The raid was chaos. Flashing lights shouted commands, the crackle of radios. Marcus's team stormed the warehouse, and after a tense standoff, they found Isaiah tied up but unharmed in a back room. Crane wasn't there. He'd slipped away, but his men were cuffed and talking. Isaiah ran to Ruby, his arms around her, his voice shaking. "Mama Ruby, I knew you'd come." She held him tight, tears streaming down her face. "Always, baby, always." James joined the embrace, his voice choked. "I'm here, son. I'm so sorry." As they drove back to Willow Street, the adrenaline faded, leaving a raw, aching relief. Ruby's house was dark, but the kitchen felt like a sanctuary again. She made coffee, her hands still shaking, and sat with James and Isaiah, the three of them. A makeshift family forged in fire. James looked at Ruby, his eyes burning. "You saved him again. Ruby, you're everything." She smiled, exhausted but whole. "Just doing what I do, James." He stood, crossing the room, and pulled her into his arms. "No," he said, his voice low. "You're more than that. You're my home." The kitchen glowed the world outside, forgotten, as he kissed her. Not gentle this time, but fierce, hungry, like he was pouring every fear, every hope into her. Ruby kissed him back, her hands on his face, the heat of his body grounding her. They sank onto the couch, the same one where Isaiah had slept 10 years ago, their hands tangled, breaths mingling. The moment was electric, a release of everything they'd held back, but it stopped short of crossing lines, leaving them wrapped in each other, hearts pounding, souls bared. "I love you, Ruby." James whispered, his forehead against hers. She laughed softly, her voice shaky. "Took you long enough, Whitaker." But the peace was fleeting. As they sat there, Ruby's phone buzzed a new message from Vanessa's number this time. "You won this round, but I'm not done. Enjoy your little family while it lasts." Ruby's heart sank. The warmth of James's arms, not enough to chase away the chill. Crane was still out there. Vanessa was plotting, and Isaiah's safety hung by a thread. The fight wasn't over, and Ruby knew the worst was yet to come. The dawn broke soft over Savannah, painting Willow Street in hues of pink and gold, but Ruby Jackson's little house hummed with a restless energy. The kitchen still fragrant with last night's coffee, and the lingering warmth of James Whitaker's kiss felt like a fortress after the chaos of rescuing Isaiah from Victor Crane's clutches. Ruby stood at the stove flipping pancakes, her hands steady but her mind racing. Vanessa Reed's final message. "Enjoy your little family while it lasts," hung over her like a vulture. And though Isaiah was safe for now, sitting at her table with a shy smile, Ruby knew the fight wasn't over. Crane was still out there, and Vanessa's schemes were far from done. Ruby slid a stack of pancakes onto Isaiah's plate, drizzling them with syrup. "Eat up, heapsy," she said, ruffling his hair. "You're gonna need your strength for them. Law books you love so much." Isaiah, now 20, grinned, his brown eyes brighter than they'd been last night. "Mama Ruby? You keep feeding me like this, I won't fit in my dorm room." She laughed, the sound easing the knot in her chest. "Boy, you're too skinny anyway. Gotta fatten you up before you take on the world." James, sitting across from Isaiah, watched them with a quiet awe. He'd spent 10 years searching for his son, only to find him because of Ruby's kindness. And now here they were, a family stitched together by love and grit. But his jaw was tight, his mind on Crane and Vanessa. "Ruby," he said, his voice low, "we need to end this. Crane won't stop, and Vanessa's playing a dangerous game." Ruby nodded, her eyes meeting his. "I know Marcus is working on it, but we gotta be ready for whatever they throw next." As if on cue, the screen door creaked and Marcus Tate strode in his police badge clipped to his belt, his face a mix of determination and exhaustion. "Morning, y'all," he said, grabbing a pancake from the stack without asking. "Hope you save some for the guy doing all the heavy lifting." Ruby swatted his hand with a dish towel, her lips twitching. "Marcus Tate, you eat more than a hog at a trough. What's the word? You got something on?" "Crane." Marcus chewed, nodding. "Got a break last night. That goon we nabbed at the warehouse. He gave us a lead on Crane's hideout, a fancy estate just outside Charleston. And here's the kicker. Vanessa's been seen there. She's not just feeding him info, she's neck-deep in his plans." Ruby's heart sank, but her resolve hardened. So she's double-crossing James and Crane both. That gal's got more nerve than a snake in a henhouse. James's face darkened. She's after money, power, whatever she can get. But if she's with Crane, she's more dangerous than I thought. Isaiah looked up, his fork pausing. "What does this mean for me? Are they still coming after me?" Ruby reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Not if we get him first, baby. You're safe with us." Marcus leaned forward, his voice firm. "We're planning a sting, but it's risky. Crane's got connections, and Vanessa's slippery as an eel. We need proof, something solid to tie 'em together." Ruby's mind sparked with an idea, bold and a little crazy. "What if we bait 'em? Vanessa's obsessed with James. We make her think she's got a shot, lure her into a trap. She'll lead us straight to Crane." James raised an eyebrow, half impressed, half worried. "Ruby, you're playing with fire." She grinned, fierce and sure. "Good thing I'm a cook, James. I know how to handle heat." The plan came together fast. Marcus would set up surveillance at a high-end Savannah hotel, where James would meet Vanessa, pretending to reconsider her advances. Ruby would stay close, wired with a mic, ready to catch Vanessa's confession. Lila, May, thrilled to be in on the action, insisted on helping. "I'll be the lookout," she declared, brandishing a tray of her infamous burnt cookies. "Anybody gets out of line, I'll hit 'em with these," Ruby groaned. "Lila, your cookies are a public health hazard. Stick to watching the door." The sting was set for Friday night, and Savannah's River Street buzzed with tourists and jazz as Ruby, James, and Marcus prepared. Ruby wore a simple black dress, her curls loose, but the mic taped under her collar made her feel like a spy in one of Lila's beloved romance movies. James, in a tailored suit, looked every bit the tycoon, but his eyes were on Ruby, steady and warm. "You sure about this?" he asked, his hand brushing hers. "Ain't no turning back now," she said, her voice firm. "Let's finish this." At the hotel's rooftop bar, Vanessa was already waiting, her red dress clinging like a second skin, her smile predatory. She lit up when she saw James gliding over with a glass of champagne. "James, darling," she purred, "I knew you'd come around. That cook can't hold a candle to me." James played along, his voice smooth but cold. "I'm here, Vanessa. Talk. What's your deal with Crane?" Vanessa laughed, sipping her drink. "Crane's a means to an end. He wants you ruined. I want your money. We help each other, but you and me, James, we could have it all." Ruby, listening from a nearby table, clenched her fists, her mic picking up every word. Marcus, stationed outside, whispered through her earpiece, "Keep her talking. We need more." James leaned closer, his voice low. "You're selling out Crane." That's a dangerous game, Vanessa. She shrugged her smile smug. I'm good at games. Crane thinks he's using me, but I've got his plans, bank accounts, contacts, everything. Once he's done with your kid, I'm taking it all. Ruby's heart pounded, but she stayed still, her eyes locked on James. He pressed harder. And Isaiah. You'd let Crane hurt my son. Vanessa's eyes gleamed. Collateral damage, darling. You'll get over it. That was enough. Marcus's voice crackled in Ruby's ear. We got her. Move in. Before Ruby could react, Vanessa's phone buzzed and her face paled. She glanced around, suddenly nervous, and bolted for the exit. Ruby jumped up, ignoring Marcus's orders to stay put, and chased her through the crowded bar, her dress swishing. Not so fast, Reed, she called, dodging waiters and stunned guests. Vanessa reached the stairwell, but Lila May was waiting at the bottom, holding her tray of cookies like a shield. Where you going, sugar? Lila said, stepping into Vanessa's path. Vanessa shoved past, but tripped on her heels, tumbling into Lila's arms. The cookies flew, and Lila cackled. Told you my baking's a weapon. Marcus and his team swarmed in, cuffing Vanessa as she screamed about lawyers and revenge. Ruby caught her breath, her heart racing, but a grin spread across her face. Nice work, Leela, she said, high-fiving her friend. Back at the precinct, Vanessa's confession unraveled Crane's network. Marcus's team raided the Charleston estate, arresting Crane and his inner circle. The evidence bank records, emails, even Vanessa's own texts tied them to Elizabeth's murder, Isaiah's kidnapping, and a dozen other crimes. Vanessa, facing charges, turned on Crane to save herself. But her dreams of wealth were dust. With the danger gone, Ruby's life on Willow Street began to heal. The neighbors, shamed by the truth, rallied around her. Mrs. Thompson showed up with an apology and a pie, saying, Ruby, I should have known better. You're the heart of this street. Lila led the charge, posting a video online debunking Vanessa's lies, complete with a dramatic reenactment, using her cookies as props. Y'all see this? She crowed, waving a charred biscuit. This is what lies taste like. Ruby laughed till she cried, her faith in her community restored. But the real healing came a week later when Isaiah returned to Savannah for good. He'd taken a break from college, shaken by the kidnapping, but stronger for it. One evening, as the sun set over Willow Street, he sat on Ruby's porch with her and James, the air thick with jasmine and possibility. Mama Ruby, Isaiah said, his voice steady, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here, not just 'cause you saved me, but 'cause you showed me I was worth saving. Ruby's eyes misted, but she smiled. Baby, you were always worth it. Always. He turned to James, his father, and took a deep breath. Dad, you too. I know you messed up, but you came back. That's what matters. James's voice broke. I'll never leave again, son. I swear it. Isaiah hugged them both, his arms strong and sure. Y'all are my family, Mama Ruby, Dad. I'm home. The words hit Ruby like a wave, and she held him tight, tears streaming down her face. James wrapped his arms around them, and for a moment, the world was perfect. That night, Ruby hosted a small party, just the neighborhood crew, Lila Marcus, Mrs. Thompson, and a few others. The yard glowed with string lights. Al Green's voice floated from the speaker, and Ruby's gumbo steamed in a big pot. As folks laughed and danced, James pulled Ruby aside, his eyes nervous but bright. Ruby Jackson, he said, taking her hand. I've been thinking. I lost a lot in my life, Elizabeth. Isaiah for too long, my own damn heart. But you gave it all back. You're my home, my love, my everything. She raised an eyebrow, teasing James. You sound like one of Lila's movies. What's this about? He dropped to one knee, pulling a simple silver ring from his pocket. Marry me, Ruby. Let's make this family official. Me, you, Isaiah, and whoever else walks through that door. The yard went quiet, every eye on them. Ruby's heart pounded, but her smile was radiant. James Whitaker, you're gonna make me cry in front of my gumbo. But yeah, I'll marry you. Just don't expect me to stop teasing you. He slipped the ring on her finger and the crowd erupted, Lila leading the cheers. That's my girl, she hollered, tossing cookies in the air like confetti. Marcus, grinning, raised a glass. Ruby, if he ever messes up, I'm still here for that gumbo. Ruby laughed, pulling James into a kiss sweet and sure under the Savannah stars. Isaiah joined them, his arms around both, and the night felt like a promise, kept weeks later. Ruby and James launched a foundation for kids in the foster system named after Isaiah's notebook, You Are Somebody. They worked side by side, their love, a quiet strength, and Willow Street remained a beacon, its door always open, its kitchen always warm. Lila still burned cookies. Marcus still stole biscuits, and Isaiah, now back at college, carried his family's love like a shield. As Ruby stood on her porch one evening, James's arm around her, she looked out at the street that had shaped her. We did good, didn't we? She said, her voice soft. He kissed her temple, his voice warm. We did, Ruby, and we ain't done yet. The light on Willow Street burned bright, a testament to the truth that love, kindness, and a good pot of gumbo could overcome any storm. That's the end of Ruby's journey for now. If this story of love, family, and fighting the good fight warmed your heart, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to never miss a tale. Drop a comment where you watching from, and what's a moment of kindness you'll never forget. Let's keep spreading the light.